In the isolated farmlands of central Wisconsin, winter can make the world feel quieter than it should be. Snow covers the fields in a white, unbroken sheet, and the cold seems to swallow every sound. It was in this silence, on November 16, 1957, that Plainfield became the setting for one of the most horrifying criminal discoveries in American history, a case so disturbing it would reshape the nation's sense of evil. This was the day investigators walked into the world of Edward Theodore Gein, a man whose crimes blurred the line between murderer, grave robber, and monster. Before Plainfield became synonymous with terror, Ed Gein was known as something else. Strange, yes, but harmless. Quiet. A handyman who helped neighbors with odd jobs and who babysat their children. People pitied him, mostly. He was a lonely man living on a decaying farm after the death of his parents. But behind the closed doors of that farmhouse, far from town and shielded by acres of empty land, Ed Gein was crafting a secret life, one built from the bodies of the dead. His story began decades earlier. Born in 1906, Ed grew up under the domination of his mother, Augusta, a woman fanatically religious and deeply fearful of moral decay. To her, the world was wicked, sinful, and full of temptations, especially women. She warned her sons that women were instruments of the devil, that sexuality was corruption, and that salvation came only through purity and obedience. Ed absorbed every word with absolute devotion. When his alcoholic father died, and later when his older brother Henry perished under suspicious circumstances, Augusta became the center of Ed's universe. And when she died in 1945, Ed's world shattered. He isolated himself in the farmhouse, sealing off his mother's rooms like a shrine and letting the rest of the home collapse into filth. The farm became his kingdom of loneliness and eventually his laboratory. 12 years later, Plainfield woke to the news that Bernice Warden, the 58-year-old owner of the local hardware store, had vanished. It was the first day of deer hunting season, a quiet time in town, so the empty store didn't raise immediate alarm. But when her son, Deputy Sheriff Frank Warden, stepped inside that evening, he saw a sight that froze him in place. The cash register open, a trail of blood on the floor, and no sign of his mother. A receipt lay on the counter, handwritten that morning for antifreeze. The customer listed was Ed Gein. Deputies drove straight to his farmhouse. Snow had begun to fall, coating the ground as they approached the isolated property. When officers pushed open the shed door, their flashlights cut through the pitch-black interior and landed on something that didn't seem real. A human body, hung upside down by the ankles, split open from sternum to groin, dressed like a deer. It was Bernice Warden. Shock spread through the group. Whatever they had expected to find, it wasn't this. The search of the house was even worse. As law enforcement stepped into Gein's home, the air was stale, thick, and reeking of decay. The clutter was so heavy it seemed to swallow the rooms. But what they found in the corners, inside drawers, stacked on shelves, those discoveries would cement Ed Gein's legacy as one of the most grotesque criminals in American history. Their flashlights illuminated chairs upholstered in human skin, bowls made from skulls, a lampshade stitched from the face of a woman, and masks carefully crafted from human heads, some with preserved features, as if waiting to be worn. They found a corset made from a woman's torso, leggings sewn from human leg skin, and boxes containing noses, vulvas, and lips. On a drawstring, officers found a pair of lips preserved like some horrific ornament. This was not the work of someone killing for pleasure or rage. This was ritualistic, methodical, intimate. When investigators confronted Gein, he confessed without hesitation. Over the next hours, he calmly explained that he often visited cemeteries late at night. He claimed he would enter a trance-like state, sometimes snapping out of it before digging, other times continuing until he reached the coffin. He admitted to stealing bodies, mostly middle-aged women who reminded him of Augusta, and bringing them home. From their remains, he made clothing and household items, crafting what he called a woman's suit, so he could, in his words, become his mother. To Gein, this was not murder, at least not at first. It was devotion. A twisted attempt to resurrect the only person who had ever mattered to him. But the bodies of Bernice Worden and tavern owner Mary Hogan, missing since 1954, proved he had crossed a line even darker. While he claimed not to remember killing Hogan, her skull and face were found in his home. His violence had escalated from theft of the dead to murder. Yet, what shocked investigators most wasn't simply the brutality, it was how ordinary Gein seemed. He was polite, soft-spoken, even helpful during questioning. There was no bluster, no pride, no anger, no remorse. Just a calm recounting of horrors. As one investigator put it, he talked about body parts the way someone else might discuss tools in a garage. News of the discovery spread quickly. Journalists from across the nation descended upon Plainfield, turning the small farming community into a spectacle. Neighbors who had once pitied Gein now locked their doors at night, unable to reconcile the quiet man they knew with the monster described in the headlines. It was the kind of case that seemed too gruesome for fiction, yet it was real. Every detail. During interrogation, Gein mentioned hearing voices, experiencing blackouts, and entering trance-like states. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with schizophrenia. In 1957, he was declared unfit for trial and committed to a mental institution. It wasn't until 1968 that he was finally deemed competent to stand trial for the murder of Bernice Worden. A judge, not a jury, presided. After a brief trial, he was found guilty, but then immediately ruled legally insane. He returned to state custody, where he remained for the rest of his life. Ed Gein died in 1984 of respiratory failure, at 77 years old, in a psychiatric facility. His grave marker was later stolen, chipped away by souvenir hunters until it vanished entirely. Today, the grave sits unmarked. Yet Gein's story did not fade. It seeped into American culture, inspiring some of the most iconic fictional killers of all time. Norman Bates of Psycho, Leatherface of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Buffalo Bill of The Silence of the Lambs. Characters built from fragments of one man's crimes, the man who turned his loneliness, his obsession, and his devotion to his mother into acts that horrified the world. To this day, the farmhouse is gone, burned to the ground in 1958, but its memory remains. The land is quiet now, reclaimed by fields and forests. Yet, the shadow of what happened there lingers. If you found this story compelling and want more deep dives into the minds of criminals and other unforgettable cases, don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.